Hello, my friends. Today, I'd like to talk about what I consider to be a foundational principle if you're on a healing journey that involves neural brain retraining or somatics or really any kind of tool or teaching that focuses on creating safety within the nervous system and the brain, specifically the limbic system part of the brain. And this foundational principle is that the limbic system is really, really good at distorting reality. Now, I purposely paused after that because I really wanted that to sink in. That the limbic system part of the brain is really good at distorting reality. So I want to talk about that because understanding and knowing this is very important. It can be pivotal, especially can't talk today, especially when you're going through a really tough, challenging time. So, like if you're going through a flare up or symptoms have increased or anything like that, this is really important to know. Because I can guarantee whatever your brain is throwing at you right now, probably 99.9% of what it's sending to you is really just, it's not true, it's inaccurate, and it's just doing that because it has prioritized survival and safety above everything else. So, for those of you that try to elevate your moods, like whether it's laughter or smiling or watching funny shows or trying to do a meditation or doing a self-containment hug and trying to think good thoughts or saying affirmations and really try to feel them and embody them, and then you feel pushback from your own nervous system and the brain because it's basically saying, wait a minute, you're not safe right now, you're in danger, and so I need to protect you. Why are you elevating your mood? Why are you laughing? Why are you smiling? Why are you going outside for a walk and really enjoying the blue sky and the clouds and the sound of the birds? So it's going to resist that, and I'm going to make a whole separate video on resistance. What I really want to focus on today is that the limbic system is very resourceful. And so it's going to distort reality. And it's so good at distorting reality that it can really get us to believe what is really happening. And so this is where I hope this video will be helpful. So the first thing I want to talk about is that the negativity bias. Everyone has it. It's a survival mechanism. It's important for us to try to look at the bad first, because if we don't, if we think everything is sunshine and rainbows and that everyone can be trusted and everyone is good and we're safe all the time, that might lead us to miss some red flags that could potentially lead to something dangerous. So the brain has this negativity bias. However, when the limbic system of the brain and the nervous system, they get stuck in this kind of survival response, that negativity bias is exaggerated, sometimes many times over. So, and that connects back to distorting reality. It's very difficult to access the prefrontal cortex of our brain, which is the logic and reasoning part of our brain, and sometimes not able to access it at all. So it's really important to just be mindful that the brain has a strong negativity bias, and it gets even stronger when it's impaired. And impaired doesn't mean broken, it just means the brain's become more sensitized, it's stuck, its stress response is not working properly. So we use our tools to try to get it back into balance. So the negativity bias is really, really strengthened. And I'll, in a few moments, I'll get to how you combat that. The second thing is that the limbic system, it in a way to protect us and keep us safe, one of the things that it also likes to do is it likes to loop. What do I mean by that? Have you ever encountered, maybe you heard something on television or somebody told you something or you read something in an article or a blog or saw it on a YouTube video, and then your brain couldn't stop thinking about it? You couldn't stop thinking about it, but sometimes it feels like there's somebody else in here and they're thinking about saying over and over. And no matter how hard you try, you can't get it to stop. And sometimes it's not one thing, sometimes it's multiple things. There's different expressions of this kind of limbic system impairment of the brain. So that's just one example. So the brain thinks that it's that in order to keep it safe, it will just grasp onto something and it'll just loop it over and over again. So how to you resolve that? You try and interrupt it and break out of the loop. And I'll share how to do that in just a moment. Another thing that the limbic system likes to do, especially during moments of stress, is that it can develop tunnel vision. And by tunnel vision, I mean it's only wants to focus on the problem, because when it's in the survival state, it's got to it like I got to resolve this. We need to bring this problem a solution, and it ties in with the looping. It will loop this sometimes, and of course it connects to the negativity bias because it only focuses on the negative usually, and of course the limbic system starts distorting reality. So these are all interconnected. I would like to give you just an example, a couple of examples of how the limbic system distorts reality. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. So I used to have this belief that if I sent a text message to someone and if they didn't reply within an hour, then I felt, oh, they don't care about me. And if they didn't reply for a day or two, then I felt abandoned. And sometimes I would get really angry. Like, they don't care about me. Like, so I would get really upset. What was really interesting to me when I really thought about this, when I really accessed my prefrontal cortex, my logic and reason, I was able to access my core self or adult self, same thing. When I accessed my core self, I would intellectualize, oh, they do care about me. I don't even know where that thought's coming from. It's ridiculous, Then I would just be like, but even though I knew it intellectually, I didn't feel it here. I didn't feel it in my nervous system. So if they didn't reply back to me within a certain amount of time, I would get a reaction in my body. I would get these weird sensations and so on and so forth. So the belief that was sent from my limbic system would translate into my nervous system, and it happened pretty quickly. And so that was another loop that I had to work on to break. Oh, another example of how the limbic system distorts reality is that when it's stuck in survival mode, it thinks it can read minds. Like our limbic system's like, oh, I can read people's minds. I know what they're thinking about me. I know what they probably feel about me. And our brain makes its decisions based on the tiniest things. Let me give you an example. I had a phone call with a friend the other day, and we were talking about something, and she asked me a question about a grounding mat that I had purchased, and I said, "Oh yeah, I know." And so I answered it, and then we hung up. And then half an hour later, she called and left me a voicemail because I was on another call, and she basically said, "Hey, I'm so sorry that I asked you about your grounding mat. I could kind of tell by the way that you replied that you didn't want to talk about it." So after I got off my phone call and listened to her voicemail, I called her back and I said, "Hey, friend, no, not at all. You can ask me about my grounding mat anytime you want. Sure, you can ask me about anything." And she replied with, I just thought by the way your tone of your voice, I thought I was annoying you." And I'm like, "Nope, nope, not at all. I've had a long day. I was really tired. So yeah, no, not annoyed at all." So our limbic system, that's just a small example of how our limbic system will interpret the tone of someone's voice. It makes an association somehow. Maybe it's a voice they heard from the past. Who knows? But it made the conclusion that, oh, because Paul sounded annoyed, he didn't want to talk about his grounding mat, which is completely not true. But the limbic system does this a lot. It's extremely resourceful. And so, how do you combat all this? How do you get out of these loops? How do we affect this superpower that the limbic system has in distorting reality? There's different ways to do this. I will give you one possible framework on how to do this. And many of you are doing this already, especially if you're doing a program. You're already doing it. So this framework is just one example of many that I could give. So first of all, awareness is key. So education and awareness is key. So the education you can get from videos like this. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that talk about limbic system impairment, brain retraining, nervous system regulation is probably the most common researched or searched for word on Google when it comes to this type of work. So if you even type in nervous system regulation or brain retraining, you're going to find a lot of videos that talk about this. So awareness and education, just knowing how the brain works, just the basics. You don't need to, you don't have to like go get certified or get a new degree in neuroscience. No, not at all. Just learning the basics can be very, very helpful for some people. So in understanding that the limbic system is impaired, it's distorting reality. So you can take back your power by choosing what to focus on, number one, and number two, focusing on something positive or neutral for a certain amount of time. So put another way, if your limbic system is sending you a thought or belief, for example, a very common one that I hear is, I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to heal. And I know that could be kind of triggering for some people to hear, but my intention is not to trigger anyone. I'm really trying to be helpful here. So again, using myself as an example, I had that belief for a long time that I was just never going to get better, especially when the professionals, my practitioners, were telling me like, we don't know what to do with you, Paul, or we don't know what's wrong with you. You might have this. Oh, and by the way, these two things that you have, there's no known cure, so you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. So of course I'm going to believe that. I mean, they're the experts, right? But one day I had this tipping point. I call it the tipping point. It has different names, but to me, a tipping point is when I just got to the point in my healing journey where I said, enough is enough. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm going to get well. I don't care what it takes. I'm willing to go all in. I just need to figure out what I'm going to go all into. So that's where I got back into doing some research. But it was research coming from more of a self-love, coming from intention. It wasn't coming from fear anymore. It wasn't coming from, I got to fix myself, I'm broken. It was more like, okay, my brain and my nervous system are stuck in this survival mode. I understand the science of neuroplasticity, that my nervous system is also plastic. I can retrain them by sending them signals of safety. So now it's really just learning how to do that. So if you're aware of fear or a thought or an emotional state that is not supportive of what you're trying to do. So like, for example, fear, that's a very hot button for many people because there's different types of fear. So for this video, I'm only going to talk about two types of fear. So fear, I'm going to call it primary fear. And then the second type of fear is responsive fear. So primary fear, we have no control over, because if you see something or hear something, your amygdala, which is part of the brain, part of the limbic system, it reacts 4 times faster than your prefrontal cortex. So it's going to respond really quickly. So you're going to feel the fear. You're going to feel it. So you have no control over that, really, not in the short run. But you do have control over the second type of fear, which is the fear response. It's literally fearing the fear. And it's not easy. It takes time to do. So how do we break that loop? How do we break any loop, really? So every program's different. So some say like, hey, why don't you find a quiet place in your home, your garage, go to your car, wherever you need to go to someplace quiet, and visualize something either happy, uplifting, calming, something that fills you with gratitude or contentment. It just doesn't have to be joy or happiness or feeling uplifted. There's different types of mood elevated states, so to speak. So you go into a visualization, and maybe you can only do it for 30 seconds. There's programs out there that say you have to do an hour visualizations a day, but some people can't. I certainly couldn't. When I started my first brain retraining program, I couldn't do a visualization longer than maybe 30 seconds. So instead, I followed their first few steps, and I just said what they had, or kind of like these affirmation statements. So I just did that for a while. But that's not the only way to interrupt these loops. So remember, to interrupt this loop, you want to make a choice that you're going to choose to focus on something different. Doesn't mean the thoughts are going to stop. In fact, they're probably going to keep going. It's okay. The whole point here is not to stop the racing thoughts. Eventually, that will come. The importance is you want to interrupt them, kind of like on this first phase, you just want to interrupt them. And when you build more capacity and resilience, you're going to start challenging these thoughts and beliefs. But initially, you just want to interrupt them. And again, this is not the only way. I'm giving you one possible framework, but when you're aware of a thought that is not supportive, like the thought could be, I'm just never going to get well, whether you believe it or not, it's important to ask this question: is this helpful? Those three words were extremely helpful in my own journey. So here's examples of how you can use it. I get the thought, I'm never going to get better. Is this helpful? The answer is no. Okay, if the answer is no, then we need to interrupt it because it's not helpful. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what if it's true? So this is kind of a nuance to this. So if you ask, is this helpful? Is it helpful to have this belief? No, but it's true. I'm never going to get better. Okay. So the next question you should ask then, if you believe it to be true, then the next question to ask is, can you be absolutely sure with 100% certainty that this is true, that you will never get better? And really pause and reflect on that. Because what you're doing right now is you're challenging your own belief, which is not easy. And if you can't get there, that's okay. This is why it's called a practice. It may take time before you can really turn that thought around. So you may not stop it from coming. The important thing is you want to interrupt it. You just want to let your brain know that this thought, this belief is not helpful to me. So I really want you to stop sending it to me. And of course, your brain's going to talk back to you, but it's true. So when this happened to me, I had this belief, or a part of me had this belief that I'm just not going to get better. My brain and my nervous system are just too far gone. And so I held that belief for a long time. But looking back, obviously there was a part of me that believed I could get better, because why would I even bother to do a program? Why would I even bother doing a daily practice with visualizations and elevating my mood and doing havening and maybe doing some tapping. And I couldn't do tapping for the longest time, by the way. That came later for me. For someone else, they might be able to do it right away. So everyone's different. Um, so I don't want to get too sidetracked. So when we're interrupting these patterns. You can do it in different ways. So everyone has their favorite ways of doing it. Some people like to paint, some people like to draw, some people like to listen to music, some people like to do like the somatic self hug. Some people like to do like gentle tapping like this, or maybe doing the butterfly tap on their chest. Maybe massage like this, massage their vagus nerve to build vagal tone. There's lots of different tools: visualization, going outside for a walk, grounding on grass or dirt or sand barefoot can be really, really regulating for some people. In fact, I recommend, if that's available to you, you can buy a grounding mat for $35, $40 online. And you can do grounding. You can put it in your bed. You can put it down on the ground. It's a lot of people find that very useful. So just remember, when you're having a tough time, that if you remember nothing else from this video, I want you to remember this: the limbic system is really good at distorting reality. So when we're not able to really access our prefrontal cortex, which is the logic and reasoning part of our brain, it is really easy to fall into the trap of believing our own brain when it's literally telling us lie after lie. And so I know it's not easy to interrupt that loop, but at some point it is necessary, because ultimately the way we take back our power is by challenging our own brain, which is kind of a paradox. I'm using my brain to challenge my own brain. Yes, the brain is made up of different parts, but I also believe that because we are a conscious being, we are sentient, that we also have a mind, and the mind is connected to the brain, but the mind is part of us, like our real essence. And whether you believe that or not, I certainly do. And I don't expect anyone watching this video to believe everything I say. Some things might resonate with you. Take those. Some might not. It's okay. I'm not attached to people agreeing with me. I just want to share things that I've learned that have not only been helpful for me, but for many, many people that I've walked this journey with. And many of the tools that I share here are evidence-based, which means they've been used by tens of thousands of people around the world. Some of them are backed by studies. Some of them are more backed by just clinical, like people working in the field, which to me can be just as powerful. One thing I forgot to talk about is another way that the brain distorts reality is urgency. So not everyone has this, but some people, with one of the manifestations of limbic system impairment and nervous system dysregulation, is the sense of urgency. So of course the brain is, it senses symptoms, whether physical or emotional. It's like, oh, we got symptoms. We need to resolve this. We need to find a solution to this. And so it's got this urgency. So I certainly had it. I certainly had urgency for the longest time. And when I did my first brain retraining program, I thought more was better. So once I built up the capacity to do more visualizations, I did. And I would do them for many, many hours, not realizing that more is not necessarily better, because we don't want to push the brain and the nervous system too hard and too fast. If you really think about it, the limbic system and the nervous system thinks we're in danger, right? It's very hyper aware. It is it's running a bunch of programs consciously and subconsciously, like got to keep Paul safe. So by elevating my mood and doing a lot of rounds, visualizations, so to speak, some people call them rounds, and I pushed my brain and my nervous system too hard and too fast, so no surprise, I had a backlash. I call it resistance, and so it's very important to pace yourself. I prefer to see people start slow and then gradually work their way up to more and really like listen to their body. I'm going to make more videos on that as well. So another way the limbic system distorts reality is it likes to create urgency. So knowing this really is half the battle, because you cannot change what you're not aware of. So it's really important to build awareness on this. So whether you're doing a program or not, so if you get a thought that is not helpful, if you get a thought or a belief, ask yourself that question: is this helpful? If the answer is no, it's probably a neural pathway that needs to be changed. How do you change it? Use a tool that you enjoy, or at least feel neutral about it. You don't have to necessarily like it, but ideally, I like to see people use tools that they like, and if not, at least feel neutral about them. And if there's a tool they really, really hate, then probably not use that tool, or find a way to reframe it so at least it's less, maybe more on the neutral side. So I often get asked, like, so what tools should I use? What tools would work best for me? And that's different for everyone. So there's a lot of trial and error to this. It's trying different things and just seeing what resonates with you, what you like at that time. It's very important though, because a common thing that I see is people will use their tools, and after they use their tool, they use how they feel as a measure of progress. And most of these tools, like visualizations and tapping and somatic tools, many of these are not designed for that. They're just designed to send a different input to the nervous system or the brain to just let it know, hey, we're safe right now, we're okay. And so just remember that. And so that's the framework that people can use to start changing the way their limbic system distorts reality. And again, I'm going to make more videos of this, but I wanted to give an overview, kind of a general idea. So again, if you forget everything I said, just to remember this one thing: the limbic system of the brain is very good at distorting reality. And if you are having symptoms, 100% it's distorting reality. So be really mindful of the stories that you tell yourself, that the thoughts that the brain is sending to you. Be very mindful of, is it helpful for me to believe this, or is it not helpful? And again, it's not easy, but over time, by repeatedly interrupting those thought patterns, they're eventually going to start to change. And I think I'm just going to end it there. I hope you found this. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you have any feedback for me or any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll answer them as best as I can. Take care.